Hey guys, welcome to another video. My name is Ian, I am Ian the Reader, and today I am back with another book review, this time of Ordinary Monsters by J.M Miro, out from Flatiron Books tomorrow, as of posting this video at least, tomorrow being June 7th of 2022. If you're watching this in the future, you can go ahead and get this book now and enjoy it, hopefully. But this is my review of the book. I was super excited to receive an ARC in the mail from the publisher a few months back. It took me a while to get through this book because it is quite long. It is over 600 pages, but I have a lot of thoughts on it, so I'm very excited to share my review with you today. Before we jump into the video though, it would mean the world to me if you would like this video and subscribe. If you haven't already, I post videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I would love it, truly love it, if you would stick around. So first, let me tell you what this book is about. This book takes place in the year 1882. This is historical fantasy, and you're going to find a lot of different settings in this book. Primarily, you're going to spend a lot of time in England and a bit of time in Scotland as well, but you're also going to be in different states in the United States of America. You're also going to be in Tokyo a little bit. This book really does go all over the place and is very epic in that sense. This book follows a group of children who are called talents. They're basically kids who have special abilities that are not really explained, but they have these gifts, and there are a lot of different types of talents that the kids can have, but these children are alone. They are isolated. All of them are orphans, and we follow two detectives as well whose job it is to go and find these children and bring them to Cairndale Institute, which is in Scotland, a special school for children just like them. Things are not as simple as that though, as the children are being pursued by a man of smoke, which is quite interesting if you ask me. Things obviously escalate throughout the story. There are a lot of underlying tensions and things going on behind the scenes that you don't find out about until you progress through the story, but that's the basic gist of this book, is that we have these children with special abilities and they are trying to get to an institute for children like them. Now, I'm going to preface this review by saying something that I normally don't say in my reviews, whether they be written or in video form, and that is, if that concept sounds interesting to you, I would recommend giving this book a go regardless of my review, because of the fact, spoilers for the review, this book did not really work for me as much as I wanted it to. I had really high hopes going into this. The concept sounded absolutely fascinating. I loved the setting. I loved just the magic that was at play here, that it wasn't like just heavy magic, but it was these mysterious powers. I thought it was really fascinating, but unfortunately the execution did fall a little bit short for me. Now, I didn't hate this book by any means, but it did not live up to my hopes for it, and I think that might just be a me thing. I'm going to tell you in my review the things that I really enjoyed about this book and the things that I didn't enjoy about this book, and you can decide for yourself if those things are going to hold you back from enjoying it. But like I said, that might just be my perception of this book, and I do recommend that if this book sounds interesting to you, go ahead and give it a go anyway. But let's go ahead and start out with some positives, shall we? Let's talk about the things that I was impressed by in this book. First off, I really did enjoy the talents and the lore and this mysterious aspect of the powers and the magic, as it were, that is at play in this world. It's very mysterious. It's not super fleshed out, but I was okay with that, to be honest. I would have liked a little bit more maybe, but I really enjoyed the fact that there are so many different types of things that can go on. There are 5 different types of talents, but within those talents there are different types of abilities. Just to give you an example of some of the talents, one of the children can heal from all wounds and things like that, to the point that he hides weapons inside of his body because he can just, cut himself open to retrieve those weapons and defend himself. Another boy has the ability to glow with his blue light, which enables him to melt or heal human beings. And so there are different types of abilities like that. There's also someone who can be invisible, and really just anything can happen. Each of the talents though does fall within 5 specific categories of talents, but there's a lot of diversity in the different abilities that can be on the page, and I thought that was really interesting. I also really did enjoy just kind of digging into the world a little bit more. It was very much a vast world, and you could feel that from the get-go, that there was a lot going on here that you didn't quite see the full picture of, but this is the start to a trilogy, so there will be more in-depth continuation of that lore in the future books, and I really did enjoy that aspect of it. Let's go ahead and talk about the second thing that impressed me about this book though, and that is the strong female characters. And I'm not just talking about one here. There were a lot of them. There were so many characters here that were just strong women, not just in their physical abilities and their prowess and ability to defend themselves, but they were just like powerful emotionally and just a force of nature in a lot of ways. And that was a really exciting thing to see, especially for this time period. I feel like in novels that you read with that setting, maybe there's like a token strong female character, but with this, they were everywhere and I was here for it. It was awesome. I loved some of these female characters. I wish I could have gotten a little bit more from some of them, as some of them were more background characters, but I was really impressed by the way that Miro took these female characters and did crazy stuff with them. It was awesome. And the third thing that really impressed me about this book were the stakes. And I mean, you know, physical stakes, but also emotional stakes as well. As far as the physical stakes go, there's the obvious peril of like trying to get the kids to this institute, but that's primarily like in the first half of the book, a little bit past that as well. But there's this continuous awareness that the reader has that there's a reason that this man is chasing them. There's a reason behind it, and he has big plans, not only for the children, but also for the world and this entire hidden world that exists in our own world, or the world of, you know, the 1800s. And it's terrifying sometimes, especially this man who you find out more about throughout the story. I really did enjoy his backstory quite a bit as well, and that's something that I really did enjoy as well. The fact that he wasn't just this mysterious man who you get no background on. The villain of this story is really somebody who you can picture very clearly, and you understand their motivations, at least to an extent. So that was something that I really did enjoy as well, were those physical stakes that existed in this world, where not only are the kids in danger, but there's a lot going on that you find out about throughout the story that goes beyond just these individual people. And then the emotional stakes were really big as well. Each of the characters of this novel faces their own form of isolation, and then that is very evident. With the children, all of them are orphans, and so there's a little bit of isolation there, but also the isolation of having these abilities that they don't understand and that they're afraid to show other people, and so they just feel like they can't really be themselves. And so when they come together, there's definitely the emotional stakes of trying to break past that isolation and form a new sort of family beyond the ones that they were born into. And that was something that I really enjoyed, were those emotional stakes and them kind of coming into themselves, not only as individuals, but as a part of a group. That was something that I really enjoyed, were those emotional stakes of, are they going to be able to find a place to fit in? Are they going to be able to be honest with themselves about who they are and who they want to be and what they are capable of? That was something that I thought was really well done. But that ends the section of the things that I was impressed by. We're going to go ahead and talk about now the things that I was disappointed in, which unfortunately are pretty hefty. So for starters, and this is like the biggest one for me, because looking at this book, it just gives off a certain vibe. You know, the cover is really great and mysterious and dark, and the setting of London and Scotland, and it's very much, I don't know, like, not grim necessarily, but there's an ambiance about the nature of this book that you would expect to exist on the actual page. And unfortunately, I felt that the prose just really didn't deliver on that. I thought that the scenery could have been so much more fleshed out. We go to all these different locations, but each one of them was kind of cardboard, to be honest. Like, I never felt fully immersed in any of the places that we went to. Even the institute that you end up in, Carindale Institute, I could picture it to an extent, but I felt like that deserved a little bit more dedication to that. Rather than trying to balance all these different things that the author introduces in the story, I felt just settling on certain settings and really fleshing them out to a greater extent would have really benefited. In addition to that, the prose itself, like, the author is actually a poet. He writes books under, this is a pseudonym, I can't remember what his actual name is, but he's a poet. And so I expected like a little bit more poetry, I guess, in the prose, and, you know, a little bit more lyricism in the words. But unfortunately, like, there wasn't like a magical nature to the writing either. It was very straightforward. There was not a lot of imagery that really moved me or impressed me. Unfortunately, the prose was just very straightforward, which made it easy to get through, but it never swept me off my feet like I expected looking at this giant tome with this cover, this premise, all of that. I just expected more from the writing itself, and there wasn't really a moment, maybe one or two lines throughout the book that I was impressed by, but in a book that's 600 plus pages, I really wanted more from it. The second thing I was disappointed in was the pacing. So this is a book that took me a while to get into, to be honest. The first 20 to 30 pages were really engaging, and then after that, like, there's a moment of interest, but it really took me between like 100 and 150 pages to get to a point where I was like, okay, I really want to continue reading this book. And to be honest, in a book that is 600 pages, that's a problem, because you have to be able to compel your reader to want to continue through the highs and lows of this book. And I felt that at moments. There's a really big scene that takes place around 40% of the way through this book, and it takes place on a train, and there are these huge battle sequences going on, and I really loved that. And that was the moment where I was like the most invested in the story that I ever was around the 40% mark, because it took a little bit to get into it, and then I was in. And then after that 40% mark, it lost me again, which is unfortunate because it was at a point that I thought I was going to be more invested than ever. And I think part of it falls back on that lack of a thorough setting. Not that like the setting was what is compelling the reader necessarily, because the plot has to be there as well, but it's a balance. I just felt like the characters were kind of wandering aimlessly through a setting that wasn't compelling and should have been, and that was something that really let me down personally. Despite that, though, I will say that the pacing did end up picking up. The last 30% of the book was really, really compelling as well. I thought that the conclusion of the story was very well handled, and it does interest me enough to pick up book 2. I probably will, but I'll definitely want to get it only on audiobook first to see how I feel about it, just because if it's going to be longer than this one, I don't know if I'm going to be able to drag myself through something that was so inconsistent with the pacing again, because that's what it was. It was inconsistent. There were moments of glory, and then there were moments of boring, to be honest. And it was very disappointing because of that, because I wanted to be invested. I wanted this to be a book that I got lost in, but the pacing just lost me. Really, the 40 to 70% range was the biggest slog for me. After that, it was really good, and before that, I had been hooked, so that's great. But again, that might just be me. I don't know. I think I've read a few reviews that felt the same way, that it kind of lost momentum around the halfway point, but again, the ending saved it a bit for me. And that brings me to my third big issue with this book, and that is that this book relies heavily upon inspiration from other works of fiction and other pop culture staples. And that's really obvious, to be honest. There are huge inspirations from X-Men, you've got Penny Dreadful, you've got Harry Potter, Umbrella Academy, Stranger Things. Like, there were so many different inspirations that were so blatant on the page that it felt like I was just like reading an alternate version of a story that I'd already experienced. And that's really what I think is the biggest downfall of Ordinary Monsters, because the characters, yeah, not all of them worked for me, but some of them did. And the pacing, yeah, not all of it worked for me, but some of it did. But the issue here is that I think that ultimately Ordinary Monsters fails to do anything unique. And maybe that's just me. For other people, that might not be the case, but it felt like this was kind of a mix and match of multiple inspirations and not a lot of originality. It really just feels like part this, part that, part this, part that. And I think that that's kind of how it's being advertised as well. I don't think it says it on here, but in the Goodreads description, I think it says something about how it's part this and part that. And this book really is that. You know, it doesn't feel like I can really distinguish anything that is particular to Ordinary Monsters. You know, a lot of it is like, this is similar to this type of story, and this is similar to that type of story, and I wanted something that I could identify as just from this book. And I know that, you know, originality and new ideas is, you know, kind of an arbitrary thing, because is anything really new under the sun at this point? But at the same time, it didn't feel fresh, and I expected it to feel fresh because the concept seemed like it could be. You know, you've got this Victorian England setting with all of these different mysterious powers and this institute and things like that. It seemed like it could be a really interesting combination, but ultimately that's all it really was an interesting combination, and it didn't feel like the story stood well on its own, and that frustrated me a lot. Okay, we made it through the disappointing parts of this book, so now let's go ahead and move on to my final rating and recommendation. So up until about the 70% mark, I was not really sure what I was going to rate this book. I felt like it was going to be around a 2.5 to 3, just because I had, like I said, some really big gripes. But I was impressed by the conclusion, and I am hopeful to continue on with this series at some point. It's not like high on my priority list. If the second book was out, I'm not sure that I'd pick it up right now, but I will read the second book at some point. That being said, with the mix of the things that I really loved and the things that I really was not impressed by, I won't say that there was anything in this book that I hated. Like, that's the thing. I didn't actively dislike anything. It's just that this failed to make any lasting impression on me, except maybe the ending and a few key moments throughout the story. So I didn't hate it, I didn't love it. This is an I like it kind of book, and so I'm gonna go ahead and put this at a 3.5 star for me. So just a little bit of a glimpse into my rating system. It's a 5, it's a new favorite. 4.5, I loved it. 4, I really liked it. 3.5, I liked it. 3, it was okay. 2.5 and beyond is, you know, whatever. But yeah, so 3.5, I liked it. I didn't love it, but I do recommend it if this seems like a story that you would enjoy. But thank you so much for watching. I hope that you did enjoy my review of Ordinary Monsters by J.M Miro. Again, thank you so much to the publisher for sending me a copy of this book. I'm glad that I read it, and I am hopeful to see where the trilogy goes from here, but I am a little bit more trepidatious going in. And maybe that's a good thing, you know, maybe I should have kept my expectations in check, but this book seemed like it was going to check all my boxes, and so what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? But thank you again so much for watching. I do hope that you enjoyed this review. Let me know in the comments if you're gonna go ahead and give this book a try or not. Maybe you're gonna love it, because I've seen some really positive reviews for this book on Goodreads, and I hope that you do love it, because despite the fact that I didn't enjoy this, I think some other audiences might, and I hope that you're one of those people. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!